I've been rereading Gabrielle Bernstein's book, The Universe Has Your Back, and it's been really a great reminder to me this summer about how I look at the world around me. Her book has what she calls universal lessons scattered throughout, and the one I want to talk about today is The World is Your Classroom. Throughout this talk, I'm going to reference several of Gabrielle's universal lessons. And the first one is, the universe is our classroom, and when we accept our role as the happy learner, life gets really groovy. The second universal lesson is, the universe is your classroom, and people are your assignments. In her book, Gabby Bernstein says, imagine what would happen if you changed your patterns before the universe knocked you over the head with a lesson. What if you shifted your energy before the money was gone? Or before your marriage was broken? Or before the addiction had beaten you to the ground? Why not get there sooner? When we choose to perceive the world with love, we can completely reorganize our experience of life. Accepting this truth can save you from years of tortured pain and drama. And oh my gosh, who doesn't want that, right? By looking at the world and the people in it as our classroom, we can shift our perspective from fear to faith. One of my favorite sayings is, failure is not a person, it's just an event. I have always found that helps me so much to see what happens to me as simply a lesson and not a finality. I've pulled out 4 elements that she talks about in her book, which can assist us in seeing the world around us as a classroom and to shift out of victim mentality. The first one is resistance. The second is letting go of judgment. The third is forgiveness. And the last one is the law of attraction. And so the first element I want to talk about is resistance. Here's a universal lesson. Obstacles are detours in the right direction. And Gabrielle says, the primary reason for our unhappiness is startlingly simple. We are resistant to being happy. When you choose to see your obstacles as detours in the right direction, you can begin to find a deeper meaning and personal growth, despite the discomfort. She tells this story of a woman named Carla who grew up in a family that rewarded outside success over everything else and believed that one should do whatever it takes to be successful. And as a result, she had this deep-rooted belief that relentless striving, stress, and struggle equated to success. She spent a decade building a high-powered career through a lot of pushing, controlling, and manipulating outcomes. She believed that the harder she pushed, the more successful, happy, and safe she would be. Her hard driving energy led her to create a career that was very impressive outwardly. Then one day, at the very top of her game, Carla had a nervous breakdown and everything fell apart. She was rushed to the emergency room and she was forced to go on disability in order to recover. The world as she knew it was over. But Gabrielle Bernstein explains that in the midst of her recovery, something happened that changed Carla's life forever. Carla remembered a prayer that her grandmother used to say to her all the time. It was the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, I may bring love. Where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness. And that where there is discord, I may bring harmony. For Carla, having a deeper awareness of these words shifted her out of resistance and into a kind of surrender. She began to see the world around her as a classroom, and this allowed her to be open to what Gabrielle calls the holy instant and paying attention to the miracles all around her. And this led her to realigning her priorities, quitting her high-stress job, going back to school to study nutrition, which had always been her dream. The spiritual truth about each one of us is that we are enough, that we're perfect just the way we are, and that we were put on this earth to do magnificent things. We don't have to embrace struggle and strife in order to succeed. Gabrielle Bernstein says, what would it be like if we were able to face our fears with a miracle mindset and recognize our fear into purpose and love. How different would our world be if everybody lived this way? And the second element I want to talk about is letting go of judgment. Lori Gerber said in an article in Huffington Post on judgment, "I will judge arrogance, meanness, selfishness, injustice, waste, sloth, greed, pride, but I am clever enough to know that it takes one to know one. I can't see anything in someone else that I do not see in myself. So if I want to be allowed to be on a high horse of any form, I'd better earn it by mastering those negative inclinations in myself." When I started on the path of sobriety and walked into my first recovery meeting, I was so full of fear and resentment. I had a bad attitude and I had a whole lot of judgment. I just plopped down in a chair and I had already decided that I was just going to hate it. And I took one look around the room and pronounced to myself, "I am not like all you alcoholics." But here's the thing. I absolutely was. No one ends up in a recovery meeting because their life's going great. And as I sat there, just in complete judgment, my attitude began to shift as I heard people talk. They were telling my story. And every person who spoke and shared was telling my story and my feelings. And when I started coming to Mile High Church, I began to learn about mental equivalence and holding a grander and greater vision of my life. Gabriel Bernstein says, "Judgment shows up in many ways. For instance, anytime you think another person is your source of happiness or pain, you're in judgment. Often judgment shows up as jealousy, comparison, and envy. Judgment can be sneaky, presenting itself as justification for condemning someone you believe has wronged you. However, this judgment is what keeps us in the illusion that we are separate from each other." Our third element of the world as our classroom is forgiveness. And I think that forgiveness really is concerning ourselves less with judgment and more with understanding. To learn how to forgive leads us to really radical transformation. And this transformation moves us into sort of a global compassion for others. An unforgiving attitude causes endless damage. We can compare it to a city, for example, that is completely locked in gridlock. Traffic is congested, roads are blocked, cars are idling with their exhaust fumes poisoning the air, garbage can't be collected and so it's overflowing on the sidewalks, people are frustrated and immobilized. That is really what forgiveness is like, and that is actually what it does to our bodies. Our thoughts influence each cell in our body. The quality of our thoughts is felt throughout our organism. Will we make them thoughts of hatred and revenge or of compassion and love? I want to tell you about this really touching story about a police officer named Jason Schechterly. About 10 years ago, a speeding taxicab slammed into his patrol car, turning it into a massive fireball. He had dreamed of being a policeman since he was 16 and had only been an officer for about 14 months when his patrol car was rear-ended in 2001. The doctors initially told his family that he wouldn't be able to survive. He was in a medically induced coma for 3 months, and when he woke, he couldn't see, he couldn't walk, and he couldn't feed himself. The flames had burned away at his face, heads, and hands, leaving him with 4th-degree burns, 52 reconstructive surgeries, and permanent disfigurement. One night, while still in the hospital, in the middle of the night, he had a moment of clarity. If it hadn't have been him, it would have been someone else, and maybe they wouldn't have been lucky enough to survive. And so he said, "So I thought that night, I'm going to be proud of who I am and how I look, and I'm going to feel like I did my job in some small way. Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. The one true blessing we have, the one thing we have control of, is our attitude." After his rehabilitation, he was able to go home where his son didn't even recognize him and his daughter was afraid to touch him. He learned to walk again and feed himself. He went back to work at the police department as a homicide detective. 3 years after that, he retired to become a motivational speaker, and he began a foundation called Beyond the Flames, which helps people turn tragedy into triumph. He's come farther than he ever dreamed possible. He was speaking to an audience in Lakewood a while back here, and he said, "I have the best life anyone can imagine. I look forward to every single day." I believe that Jason Schechterly reached deep down into the power of forgiveness and decided to become whole again when he was able to let go of the why and focus on what he can contribute to others around him. Here's a universal lesson. Freedom from the past is available to you when you show up for assignments in the present. Forgiveness frees us from our internal prison of suffering by letting go of anger, resentment, and bitterness. Forgiveness keeps our heart open for happiness and love to be expressed and felt. It does not excuse a terrible offense and make it right. It just helps us to end the suffering within ourselves and to open our heart again to the natural flow of happiness and love that seeks us always. Eric Butterworth says in his great book, Spiritual Economics, "There is a great idea that you will encounter again and again on your quest. You are a living magnet, constantly drawing to you the things, the people, and the circumstances which are in accord with your thoughts. In other words, you are where you are in experience, in relationships, and even in financial conditions because of what you are, which is where you are in consciousness." And so by understanding that the world is our classroom, we can shift into a powerful space of transformation. We can look at any areas of resistance in our life and see obstacles for what they are, simply information to shift us in a different direction. I invite you this week to see where judgment might be showing up in your life. Become really conscious about what you're judging. There is such power to really step into greater forgiveness for ourselves and for others. And this allows us to energetically jettison anything that is blocking our greater good. And once we realize that we are the architects of our own dreams, then we can empower ourselves with hope, with creativity, and a profound awareness that the universe really does have our back. Let us pray. And so as we move into this moment of prayer, we just invite ourselves into the stillness, into the quiet, into the absolute knowing that God is all there is. Simply recognizing that there is a power and a presence that is all around us, that is the beating heartbeat of our universe, of every person, every animal, that there is absolutely no place and nowhere that God is not. And as we align ourselves with that divine, creative, amazing presence, I just know and affirm that there is a recognition that this presence is available and expressing in each and every one of us. And in this moment, we just come to a profound awareness that this wonderful, amazing universe is our classroom. All our experiences co-conspire to bring us to fulfillment, to bring us to happiness. And so we simply let go. We simply let go of resistance. We surrender into knowing that God has our back. And we allow ourselves to become aligned with all those amazing qualities of the universe, with compassion and kindness, with wisdom, with clarity, but most of all with love. And we just allow that sense and that feeling of love, which is always flowing to us, to just infuse every cell of our body. We allow it to heal us. We allow it to express as us. We simply allow it to be us. For the truth is, God is love. and therefore each one of us is love as well. And so I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for all the lessons. I'm grateful for the power of forgiveness. I'm grateful for the amazing community of Mile High Church. And I know that as I release these words and these truths to that amazing alchemy of love and law, that all is well, because all is God, and so it is.